And so we need to find a third way. We need to find the way of the couple. Right? Which is not my way. It is not your way. It is our way. And our way hasn't been created yet. So it's not just okay, just half an hour this and half an hour that. It is like, okay, well, let's put our head together. What do we want to do as a couple?
Wait, but doesn't that just mean that? So I know I'm interrupting you, but doesn't that just mean that instead of being unhappy for an hour and then the other person being unhappy for an hour, you're both unhappy for 2 hours? You know?
No,
okay.
No, because it is about finding the way of the couple which both of you actually agree with.
Welcome back. We are on today with my guest Jáchym on the Too Old for This Shit podcast. I'm your host, Angie. I have this new little thing. If you want to support this show, I have this donor exclusive Ask Me Anything. The link is in the show notes and it's also on my website, angie-s.com, where there's a little button that says support Angie. On this donor exclusive Ask Me Anything, I will answer all of your questions on the podcast, unless you request a private reply. And your donations will go towards the production of this show, including podcast hosting, equipment upgrade, future assistant to help me with all the things podcasting, and so on. So any support that you can give me is really, really appreciated. And there still is a free version of supporting this show, which is, if you enjoy it, to just give a little 5-star rating, a little review. Be sure to tell your friends, and you can subscribe for free on all the podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Radio FM, Amazon Music. Did I say Munich? Amazon Music, and so on. So there you go. And listen, the more you do that, I think you know the second part because you've heard me say it so many times, but the more you do that, the more it helps new listeners discover this show. Woo! And that makes me really happy. So today's episode, we have Jáchym Jeerie, who is back, and you may remember him from episode 58 back in April when he came on with his wife Natasha, and he is back because there's something that he said that him and Natasha said. We don't believe in compromises. And that particular bit, you've asked me to get them back and explain what they meant. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're going into it and explaining what they mean by we don't believe in compromises. So, without further ado, please help me give a big warm welcome to the fantastic Jáchym. Let's begin. Welcome, Jáchym.
Well, it's great to be back.
Well, thank you so much for coming back, and thank you so much for joining me. I really want to talk about something that you mentioned. Yourself and Natasha, when you last were on the show, you mentioned something around resolving conflicts with your partner last time you were here, which was episode 58, which is called Love Isn't Enough. And in that episode, we covered, quite a lot of things, but some of the things that, are sort of going to be relevant for today's, how we're going to start off the chat. Who knows where it's going to go, but how we're going to start it off is that, the thing that Jáchym and Natasha talk a lot about, part of the, sort of their mission and their philosophy is that it comes back from the place where they come from and how they didn't start off all, pink flowers and roses everywhere. It was a long journey, and, they went from a couple who didn't have trust in their relationship and each other, bickering, passive aggressive, snarky remarks, to being in a respectful and loving relationship, and into a relationship that actually, I've never met you and Natasha in real life, obviously, but there's a lot of things that you say, and your energy is something that I definitely sort of look up to. And we also cover things, how to move from a transactional relationship to being of service with your partner, and how to be able to receive without nagging. And that doesn't make sense when I say it, but when you listen to it, it does make sense when you listen to me explain it. But I'm just sort of recapping. And they talked also about, how to start parenting your romantic partner, how to be responsible for your own emotions, which is something that I'm really big on this podcast. It's, when you're triggered, you've got to freaking own it, not always casting blame. And, with that, we also, of course, like covered, the blaming and projecting game, and how it's not just about being honest with someone or with your partner, but it's about being honest with yourself, which is really big. I feel like it's a huge area. And so we touched a little bit on this bit that we're going to cover today. We touched a little bit on, but not a lot, but it was about how they don't believe in compromises and sacrifices make for a healthy and a happy relationship. And with that, Natasha said that you both don't believe in compromises, and that and we didn't get a chance to explore it because, we are time constrained, and I don't want to be doing a 5-hour episode. There's so many things I want to ask you, but that bit, we don't believe in compromises, is something that you who's listening, you have sent messages and desires to get them back on and explain that part. And we will. And today I'm really happy to say that just as an FYI, their baby has arrived. And obviously Natasha, is busy with that and she needs to look after the baba. And so Jáchym is here with us today. And I'm really excited to speak with you, especially after what I can only imagine this is such a transformational life event to become a father. So it'd be interesting to hear, just your voice today on that, and coming from that place now, it's a different sort of place, I'd imagine. And so just to recap, and before we dive in, would you mind please introduce yourself, where you live and what you do?
Wow, amazing. We really covered a lot on that last episode.
And I didn't even mention everything. I was like, oh, it's going to be too long. But yes, it was an amazing episode.
All right. Well, I'm Jáchym Jeerie. I'm currently living in Malaysia. I'm a relationship coach, and we run yourexceptionalrelationship.com, where you can check us out. There's a bunch of blogs that we've written. We have our own podcast called The Awakened Wife. And I'm really excited to be back here with you and dive into this topic.
And this is interesting because I know you both have gone through such a journey, which is something that, that you can listen to it on episode 58. So I'm not going to go into like all the details, but it's something that is so like, it sounds like it's an ideal, but how do we do this? Because I know, when we fight with our partners, or we feel like they're doing us wrong, or we just like, there's an issue that keeps coming up over and over and over again. And how, the thing that we are being taught a lot is that, in life, you have to compromise. There is no perfect job. There is no perfect person. There is no perfect relationship other than what's perfect for you both in that moment. But we always thought, you've got to meet people halfway. You've got to compromise. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, wow, that sounds great. That means like if we don't have to compromise, no one loses, no one is like the winner. We're both a team. But what does that actually really mean in practical terms? When you are with your romantic partner, emotions are heightened. Like, what does it mean you don't believe in compromises? Like, do you not meet each other halfway? Like, what does that mean?
Right. So when I was thinking about it today, how can I explain this the best? And I was thinking about a very simplistic example. Let's say you have a car ride and you want to listen to music and you want to listen to classical music and your partner wants to listen to heavy metal. And so a compromise would be halfway through the journey, we're going to listen to classical music and then we're going to switch to heavy metal. That is a kind of classic example of how you would compromise. But what it often happens with these kind of scenarios is that both of you aren't really happy with it. Meaning like I'm unhappy because I have to listen to heavy metal for an hour and you have to listen to classical music for an hour. And we are both not really fulfilled. And so the idea of compromise is born from the idea that there's my way and then there's your way, right? And so we're like, okay, well, there's my way and there's your way. So we just meet halfway and then it's okay, make a huge concession. But what that doesn't take into account is that we are a couple. And so we need to find a third way. We need to find the way of the couple, right? Which is not my way. It is not your way. It is our way. And our way hasn't been created yet. So it's not just okay, just half an hour this and half an hour that. It is like, okay, well, let's put our head together. What do we want to do as a couple?
Wait, but doesn't that just mean that? So I know I'm interrupting you, but doesn't that just mean that instead of being unhappy for an hour and then the other person being unhappy for an hour, you're both unhappy for 2 hours?
No, because it is about finding the way of the couple which both of you actually agree with, which both of you make happy. So maybe you're not going to listen to music. Maybe you have a fun conversation. Maybe you have a music genre that both of you love, and that's what you're going to listen to. Like, that is to find out what is it actually that is going to bring you joy in this car ride, and that is respecting and honoring both of you. So it is not about both being miserable. That would be a failed version of that. But it is about putting aside what I think is right and what is my way, which means I have to do a little bit of letting go and taking perspective and seeing that my way is not everything. Like, there's lots of other options out there that I don't even know of yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very I don't know, there's an expression for that, like a very fueled statement, like my way is not the right way. And I think that applies to every areas in life, like we see people so how do you call it, like entitled to their opinion, not understanding that that's just their reality.
Right, exactly. And so we need to really have this capacity to see, okay, well, I can see what I want and I can see why I want it, but what else is there? And how does my partner see it? And what is their world like? Right. And then you expand. You're not contracted in just a rigid way of being. And it's like, well, no, we just need to do it this way. And that's a very childish way of relating, really.
So how would you bridge that? Would you, so let's say that kind of scenario, would I just go, well, you clearly don't like classical music. I clearly don't like rock music or heavy metal. How about we maybe no music, or just like, how would you bridge? Would you say, look, let's look for like a third way that we both like? And
so the way I would bridge it is be like, so we both don't like it. I don't want to be unhappy for an hour. I don't think you want to be unhappy for an hour. How about we find a way to have this car ride that we both would enjoy?
So the car ride, that's almost like, not too fueled, although it can be, it's never comfortable to go like on a road trip with someone and like the tension is really bad. There's really bad atmosphere. Like those car rides are just like awful. But let's say if we were to take it, but in general, that topic is not, too emotionally highly fueled, I would imagine. But how about, things like where do you want to live or sex? So let's say one person really, but that could be down to compatibility, right? But let's say after a couple of years of being together, the libidos do not match anymore. And maybe one person still wants to have the intimacy every day, or like, sex every day. And the other person is like, once a week is enough for me. How do you find a third way? Or is this like, maybe like not in that category that you'd use that?
Well, here's the thing, especially when it comes to sex, people are often looking at the frequency. So I would like to have sex every day. And with it comes the idea that every day it's going to be fantastic and great and fulfilling and awesome.
Yeah, no, it's exhausting.
and that's just not the case. So instead of looking at the frequency, it's also important to look at the quality of it, right? And then also, what is sex giving you? Right? What am I actually looking for? Why is it so important that I have sex every day? Because as you know, sex can be great and sex can be really awful. Yeah. So sex in itself is neutral. However, the meaning we ascribe to it is not, right? We make some kind of meaning with it. And so that is something to dig into and be like, well, why is this so important? Because many arguments that we have, they are staying at the surface, right? So we are looking at a symbol like money or sex or vacation or whatever it is, and it's a symbol for something, and we are not going deeper about why that is important to us and what that means to us. Because when you dig deeper, then you actually realize there's many different ways that you can fulfill that need or that specific expression in your life that you're looking for, but it doesn't have to be in this rigid way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, would you mean it's like, for example, feeling desired or feeling desirable can be found, let's say, if you're not having the amount of sex that you think that you want or that you feel that you should have in your relationship, because it sort of impacts how you feel, your desirability. Is that something that maybe can be sort of fulfilled? So let's say if you join like, a dancing class, belly dancing or pole dancing or whatever it is that you enjoy, where you can sort of like get into your own, like fulfill that, almost like doing an activity for yourself that actually does wake up those feelings, those sensation. And then you walk around not needing the external validation and being able to connect maybe with your partner from a different place so that he doesn't feel like he has to have sex with you or she has to have sex with you. But I think it almost by going into that internal space and fulfilling that for yourself, you almost fix that issue. And then actually the consequence may be that your partner would actually maybe even want you more again.
Right.
Is that what you mean? How you would sort of address those voids where you sort of maybe like fill them other places?
Yep, that's one way of doing it. The other way is to look at, okay, well, I'm looking at sex and sex is giving me something, and maybe it's a certain energetic polarity that you can experience within the sexual experience. And then it's like, well, how are we living our day-to-day relationship? Right? Are we actually cultivating that polarity outside of the bedroom? You see? So there's different ways of looking at it and seeing what's really going on. And what you said, like, is beautiful. All of what you said is perfect. But it really is about taking ownership of what you're needing and wanting, and digging into that rather than being on the surface level. Because when you stay on the surface level, there's no wiggle room. It's like, well, unless I have everyday sex, I'm unhappy. So basically, you got to leave. And with most people, to have sex every day is not realistic.
No,
for most people.
Even like that sort of, what you were just saying now about people just saying, having sex every day, or they have to listen to a certain type of music, or they need to have a partner who's in the same political views as them, or whatever, those sort of like those phrases that people throw, but they are people maybe not realizing that maybe they don't even know where that's coming from, right? And I almost like when I was hearing you sort of like saying it was that I had this thought come up, was that it's so sad to think about the amount of including mine, amount of relationships that have been burned down because of people limiting themselves in that, like not realizing that there's a way through this. People just go, well, oh, now he's voting that thing, or now he's not wanting sex, and now he's whatever it is, that you hear people give up, so over one thing. It's kind of sad.
Totally, absolutely. Which is why we are so passionate about this work, because we need to give people perspective on it, right? To see that actually there's more to it. And often the things that we crave are often the not just surface in terms of the expression of it, but also in terms of the depth in ourselves, meaning they're just giving us a little pleasure high, right? So, oh yes, I had a bit of sex, now I feel great, or I got the approval, now I feel great. But a relationship can have so much more depth and so much more fulfillment than those little pleasure highs. And when you find that, then it's like, why would I want to have sex every day when I can have this absolute deeply amazing connection with my partner that's so soul nourishing that I thought I would get if I had sex every day, but actually I wouldn't have had it because I would just have gone through the activity. And so it's about dropping deeper rather than trying to recreate the highs of the past.
Yeah. And I think like what you said, I've got a feeling that for some, that's not going to sort of like, it's not going to resonate, but I feel like that for others, because like to me, like sex is really a place I go to. So like the place to sort of arouse me is in my head. Like it sounds like, or like, it's like an energy thing. And so I feel like if I can actually, the better that relationship is outside of the bedroom, the bed, like that polarity, because I think you mentioned about polarity in the bedroom, but it really starts outside of the bedroom, you know. It really, really does. It's like, I don't know if it was Esther Perel who like coined this term that said, you know, like foreplay happens all day, like it's or something like that. You know, I'm totally misquoting this, but it's basically foreplay is not that 15 minutes that most people are taking before they go, bam, wham, thank you, ma'am, or thank you, sir. So it really is a much longer process. And it's really about, there's a lot to be said that when people when you feel this connection with someone and you feel you can be yourself, you're feeling seen, you're feeling heard, you feel you can just be yourself, you're not constantly judged for your choices. It's a really erotic place because not many of us get to have that. I would actually even go as far as most people don't have that ever. I mean, you know, it's even when you're with your people with their families, they get into argument over things because they have different values. People with their friendship is the same. Colleagues, you know, a lot of people having to hold back nowadays about what they really stand for. And I think that is like, it's almost like what you guys are doing is not just relationship. It's really sort of like almost like this way of life. I know that you say, you know, relationship coaches, and you definitely are. But it's almost like there's this other surprise that comes in because effectively it goes deep. It's about how you approach life, how you approach yourself, how you approach other people. And that is such a skill that's gonna, like, I feel the more I find out about my blind spots or limiting beliefs, the better actually how I feel and how it impacts other people and my relationships, the better, you know, it has an impact on everything.
Totally. I think it's one of the most important things because you're taking yourself everywhere you go. And so we are busy fixing circumstances all the time. Actually, the issue isn't in the circumstance. It's the meaning that we're making of it and our reaction to it.
And, you know, I want to ask you this. You know, you talked about last time about, you know, being of service in a romantic relationship. How can you be of service to Natasha, and Natasha saying that how can she be of service to you? And where's the line between boundaries and being of service? Because I do feel like, especially when we have to be honest with ourselves, right? I feel like we really do need to take care, hold on, listen to our soul, our heart, our spirit, whatever it is that you want to call it, right? Everyone, we all have different terms for it, but there has to be a limit, right? Because when are you too rigid with your boundaries? And when are you just being like, what is that line between boundaries and being of service? And obviously, I'm not thinking of abusive relationships where people are hitting on someone else and abusing them in all kinds of ways, right? I'm only talking about, you know, the normal relationship with their ups and downs. But like, how do you define that line?
Right. It's a good question. And the way I see being of service, how some people take it, it is exactly this unclarity between service and boundaries. And at the same time, for me personally, it's actually the same thing, because I can only be of service when I'm nourished, when I'm taken care of, when I'm looked after myself. I cannot be of service otherwise. I'm draining myself, and it's actually a destructive pattern. It's a destructive pattern that a lot of women run, where like, well, I'm being of service to him, but they're completely neglecting themselves, and then they're completely depleted. And how are you going to be of service when you're completely depleted, right? Yeah. And so the very first step of being of service is to take care of yourself, make sure that you're in a good place, and then you actually bring the energy into the relationship that you want to cultivate in the relationship. Because if you want to cultivate depletion and eventually resentment because you're just given and spend it all, then that's not the right energy. But if you want to bring an energy of joy, of happiness, of love into the relationship, well, then you need to actually be with yourself and see what do you need yourself. And then you can actually be of service to your partner.
It is almost like being able to give without this is what I'm hearing, right? Let me know if I understood you correctly, is that when you're sort of nourishing yourself, and so your cup is full and it's overflowing, right? You've slept right, you eat well. So that's boundaries too, right? Being good with your body, being good with your spirit. Because if you're not sleeping for a week, there's no way you can go to like this boardroom meeting and like nail it. Right? You know, it's like it's going to be difficult. You're not going to be on your A game. And it's the same thing with everything else. So so you've looked after yourself. And so basically when you then are from this place of this good place of, you know, I would say like maybe like an overflow, what you give, you sort of almost forget the minute you've given it. It doesn't come from like a tit for tat, because a lot of people I think are like, well, you know what? I did this, I did that. And why are you not returning this? And it's this really kindergarten behavior, right? It's like, well, I did this, so you do that. And it's like, it's that feeling. The only way I can describe it, it's like this, it's a bit rapey. That makes sense. It's a bit like, well, I did that. So it's like this emotional blackmail, you know, and it's this really uncomfortable place. And I'm not saying I'm above it. I have most certainly, you know, feel resentful if I felt like, well, the other person didn't keep up their side of the bargain that I imagine in my head they were supposed to, right? So I'm not above it when I say that, you know, so, but it's definitely something that, you know, as much as I can have like sort of walked away from, because I'm like, wait, this is like, because the minute you're on the receiving end of it, you go, oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's not okay. That feels really uncomfortable. So is it where the boundaries comes in? Because you've sort of like nourished yourself. So you're not going to give something that you weren't prepared to, quote unquote, never cash in, like to not, they were never, you are happy to lose it. And I know that's not the right term for this, but you know what I'm saying? It's like,
you're just giving for the giving's sake, and as you said, you're going to forget it. So like you gave it for the sake of giving, right? Mm-hmm. So that's absolutely correct. And if you're not in that space, it's not like you can't have that. It's not like you have to live up to some magical standard or something of being selfless and whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you want to have it be transactional, at least make it conscious.
Right. Yeah.
You know, be like, look, I'm going to give you a massage because I want to have sex afterwards.
Yeah. 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 At least be honest with it.
Yeah.
I guess then at least the person's making an informed decision whether to receive your massage or not.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. And then I think that's also why sex workers are like amazing, because I understand why it's been around for so long, because it's a very honest exchange. It's like, I'm giving you money. We've agreed for a service and there's no expectations afterwards. I don't have to call you. You don't have to call me. You know, like there's this very clear boundary.
Yep.
And it's like, and you're in agreement. And I think it's almost like, that's like the transactional, when it functions almost, I would imagine that's just me imagining. That's very clear transaction. It's like you go to work, you get a salary, although that's a bit more blurry because, you know, overtime and people disrespecting each other. But yeah, it's at least it's honest, right? If you say, I'm doing this, you give me this. That's how much it's going to cost you. That massage is going to cost you sex.
That's right. So, and then you don't have bad feelings because it is clear. And you can have those things very openly discussed. You can see, look, I'm going to work, I'm making money. I want to come home to a clean home because you're at home.
Right. Yep.
Right. And that's very clear. And you can have a discussion around that. And it's not a hidden expectation, but it's an agreement.
Exactly. Yeah, because you still have to function, right?
Exactly.
Like Mary Poppins does not live in the house. So, you know, we all have to agree what's going to happen and who's going to do it. And if we can maybe outsource it, if we can afford it, that's it. You know, it's, that makes sense. So with that in mind, is there ever a good reason to walk out and never look back? And the reason why I'm asking this is because there's a lot of people who have deal breakers, things that maybe, like, I know, like there may be a line that if that is crossed, and again, that's not talking about abusive relationships, you know, abusing in all kinds of ways. I'm just, you know, normal relationship with ups and downs, because there are people who will just walk and never will look back. Is that behavior of being, well, this is it, that's the line, and I'm not even discussing it? Would you say that's like what is it? So for me, I feel like I understand it, but I also think that it's maybe a little bit a self-sabotage kind of behavior, because I think it's your internal shadow, or your ego and your pride trying to survive, and it's doing its job well. but maybe you're self-sabotaging something that has a potential for a lifelong, meaningful relationship. And again, I'm not above it. I have certainly walked away too of situations. But looking back, I'm like, yeah, was that really a good move, you know?
Right. Well, they're very difficult questions because it really depends on your situation. I do believe that in today's culture, we are very quick to pull the plug and be like, okay, well, I'm out because there's so many other options that you can go into. And it can prevent you to really explore a relationship more deeply and find more fulfillment after you've gone through some of the difficult stages, because pretty much every relationship will have rough patches, right?
Oh, agree.
And so for me, if you have been together for a long time and something starts to happen, I wouldn't be too quick to just be like, well, I'm out of here. Right. Like I would say, okay, well, I have those thoughts that are coming up that I don't know, want to divorce or I want to break up or whatever, but I'm going to put that off to 6 months to a year or something like that. And if you know, and then that way you have a time frame where like, I'm going to still be in there. I'm going to be open. I'm going to communicate. I'm not going to have the hidden expectations and hope that my partner just magically changes or something like that. Like I'm not going to go after it and I'm going to express myself and all of that to make sure that the relationship has a fair chance. And if after a year it hasn't worked out, by all means, you know, you can always walk out.
Do you know what I think it is? When people walk out, because obviously, personally, like, you know, in the last few years, you know, there's two friendships that so this is obviously going away from romanticism, but it's, you know, it's in a way it's kind of relevant. I feel like as much as I said, like, you know, I have walked away and not been in touch, it has been it's a very difficult thing for me to do. And it's happened with two friendships. And the thing is, it wasn't actually that final thing. It was many, many, many little things. So I think even like in that, you know, that I've tried to address, you know, it's not because I didn't try, that there's been sit down conversation, that kind of stuff. But when things doesn't get resolved and things keep happening again, whatever it is, then it's like, And I feel like when people maybe do that in romantic relationships, they may say, well, this one thing happened. And that is, for me, that's a hard limit. That's a hard no. And I understand that. I respect that. But I also feel that maybe it wasn't just that one thing, because if everything had been that amazing, you would have wanted to sit down and see, wait, what the fuck happened here? Like, can we just like talk about this? Because this makes me really thinking, this takes me to a really bad place. And I've had a really great 2 years with you, or whatever, you know, 2 years. And this happened and this is making me question now. Can we, like, what's going on?
Right. Exactly. So I think nowadays we are very tolerant, or it's like the frog, you know, the image of the frog that you put into water and then you start turning up the heat, and before you know it, he's boiling and dying.
Yes.
Right. That often happens in relationships. It's like, a small thing here, a small thing there, and you start to get used to it, and it's getting worse. And before you know it, it's like this one thing which like seems to, like, this is the end, but actually it has been building up.
Right.
Like
yes, the rut has installed itself. The rust was there and it spread. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right. And so it's important to be mindful of that, which comes back to being in tune with yourself, nourishing yourself. So be honest with yourself, because we often are too quick rationalizing things away. Oh, he didn't mean it this way, or she didn't mean that, or whatever. Or it's not good. Because we need to be honest with ourselves so we don't start tolerating those things and let it slide down the drain.
So how do we communicate that? Because I find that to me, it's like, that's the difficult part for me, is because, like, how do you communicate it with someone? So, you know, with your partner in a way, so I said they did something and it really bugged you, and you know, you try to work on it, on your trigger, but something is just off. Like, you just like, if you don't talk about this, it's just there's gonna be this gap building up between you two. And so, like, how do you, because I feel like I'm very awkward in communicating those things, and I say that because I see people's reactions. as if we were like partners, right? Romantic partner. Like I see the reaction, I'm like, okay, clearly I'm not saying this right, because that was not the reaction I was like expecting. So how do you, and again, maybe I wasn't in the place where I was definitely not in the place where I was nurturing myself. So that's also, I think maybe like it was coming from a place of not being completely good with myself. Maybe, I don't know. Like, but how do you communicate? Is there a secret sauce?
There's a secret sauce. It's called culture.
Okay, go on. Tell me.
It means that you set up the relationship in a way that it is in the culture of the relationship that you discuss things and that you're open with each other.
Oh, I like that.
And if you don't set it up, then you are in this awkward space where it's like, oh, I have all of this stuff that I want to discuss, but I don't know. You have to start building the culture where openness, honesty is just normal. And there is room for being awkward. There's room for fumbling around and trying to get it out, and you don't do it properly. You want to establish that within the relationship as a foundation. And then, like, for example, cheating, it really doesn't become much of an issue anymore, because it's like, okay, well, you know what, I'm actually attracted to someone else, and you actually bring it up in the relationship because it's a rule within the relationship that you discuss those things.
Yeah, but I feel, I was fun thinking of like the latest relationship I had. I feel like we definitely had a culture of honesty, but I think maybe where the reaction started to not being what I expected over time was, I think because we didn't have enough of a full cup in our own life separately from each other, and because and that was affecting us, and it was a bit turbulent relationship. And so effectively, if you start adding, if you're starting to fan the fires, what feels like a small fire, it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there's that people don't have the scope to handle whatever it is that the other person needs to talk about. Because sometimes it does feel like, I remember one time we had this really long, very honest conversation over the phone. It was like 2 hours. And I felt like the next day, and you felt the same. I felt like a truck had just like literally just rolled. Like I felt like a truck had just driven over me in my sleep. I woke up and I was just like, physically, I felt like I was glued to the bed. It was just draining. So I think maybe there is a bit of a dance with this. There's maybe a tact like that I am not really, doing, because I think you're right. If you are in a culture, that if you've set up that culture in a relationship, there isn't actually much that you can say or do that the other person that you can't talk with the other person. That's how I feel. But eventually it's almost like, but that's probably a different conversation. It has to do with like my bad patterns and maybe bad behavior. And so effectively over time, you can't really you don't have that space to talk about it. And then it gets that bond between you gets stretched really, really thin. And all of a sudden one of you goes, that's it.
Right. Well, there's two things in what you said. And one of them is, well, he didn't react the way I expected him to. Well, the very first thing is the expectation, right? I
mean, like he'd get mad.
Yeah, he'd get mad, but he may get mad like that, and that's okay. Like that's part of that. That's part of the relationship dynamic is that you can get mad and all of this kind of thing, but at least you're in the conversation. When you're not in the conversation, it can't come out. And the second thing is that I'm not sure how I can phrase this properly, but there's something which I would say is too much honesty. And
maybe that's it. Yes.
But maybe that's not the right term, because what I'm trying to get at is that when we are being honest, we are often, or some people fall into the trap that they are honest in the way that they are overly emphasizing their temporary feelings.
Oh, you need to say that again. That was important. Say that again. I feel like we need to hear this again.
When we are honest, we can fall into the trap that we are overemphasizing our temporary or fleeting feelings in the moment, and they become this huge thing. And if you didn't have spoken it out and whatever, it would have actually passed. And so there is something to not always right away, immediately speak about everything. There is a place of just, letting things settle a bit, learning to have some emotional maturity within yourself. And then when something is actually important, being able to bring it up. And this kind of emotional maturity and being able to process your emotions or sit with the energy within you is something that then is very useful within the conversation, that you can handle the discomfort that can arise when he gets mad or something like that, that you can stay in the conversation despite the discomfort that's coming from you. Because what happens when the band gets stretched very thin is that both people are lost in their own drama. And they just can't handle it, and then it just it breaks, right? Yeah. And so when both people are clear-headed, you get fantastic connection. When one person is clear-headed and the other person has their drama, what you get is compassion, which is usually beneficial and fruitful for the person. But when both people are lost, you're going to get conflict.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely. It is so true. And that thing where you said about the temporal feelings, that's huge, because and that's something that I'm observing a lot, even like on social media, online, people just straight away, like, I'm like, it's weird. Like, I know this is like maybe like a tangent, but like there's this account I follow on Instagram, which is most of the accounts I follow is like really sarcastic, dry humor. It's just really sarcastic. So you don't follow those pages if you're not into that kind of humor, right? Like, it's dark humor. It's like, there's people who like get like, they follow and then they spend time commenting on it about their triggers. And I'm like, this is a comedy. It's not a TED Talk. It's like, what you like, right. It's just, it literally would be like me going on YouTube, clicking on an engineering how-to video, and me commenting, putting in the comment, well, this is not how to make a chocolate cake. Like, what is this? What's this channel doing here? Like, I feel really triggered. This is not what I was asking for. Like, it makes no sense. And I think it's that lack of self-awareness, right? Of like, read the room. And I think it's like what you're saying, like when we are heightening emotions, it's true. Like, there are many things we just have to just wait. But I find, in conflict with partner, because everyone is a bit different, right? So some of us, we need a bit of time to digest. I'm like that. Like, I need time to digest. I don't like to speak out straight away when I'm triggered in a relationship, because I know what I'm like. I need to just wait and figure out what's happening, because I don't even know what's going on while I'm feeling this way. So I need a bit of time. But then I will pick a partner that tends to be that would be the opposite. They need to talk about it now. They want you to like just out now. Don't like, they think I'm out there like brewing, and I'm not. I'm just out there processing and digesting and actually simmering down and filtering out all the crap, right, before I can talk about it. So what would you do in those situations? Because those are two different styles of communication. Is there a third way?
Right, right. You're handling conflict in a different way, right?
And even if I've mentioned it, I told them, I was like, I'm not avoiding you. I'm not avoiding talk about it. I just need time. I'm not trying to not talk about it. I'm trying to figure it out. That's it. And right. They say they understand, but effectively their innate program, if you like, clashes with mine.
Right. And do you have a time frame where it's like, okay?
Usually, I usually a day or two. Like, if it's something like, of importance, I usually need a day or two, because I actually don't even know what's going on. Like, I get really just confused in my mind. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I just don't know. And the emotions are blinding my perception. So if they push too much, then like the more they push, the less I can't even speak. It's like I'm muted. I can't even say anything. And then, but if they push hard enough to carry on and they start to get annoyed and they start to rile up, then I will meet them at that level, because I feel like I'm cornered.
Right.
And I have to, it's almost like I have to like defend myself, it's like, and then I blurt out nonsense. And then we have the discussion about the nonsense, and then they think it's resolved. Then I go home, and the next day I'm like, oh, wait, no, that wasn't what was going on. And then it's really hard to go back and say, by the way, but that's why I need the processing time. I just have no idea what I want to say.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I mean, there's different things that you can do. One of them is to have a time frame where it's like, look, I just need 24 hours to kind of think about it, and just we can come back together, and then we can talk about it. Right now, it wouldn't be fruitful because I don't know what's going on myself, and I would just be blabbing, and it wouldn't go anywhere. Right. If you've tried that. And the other thing is literally to practice together. That one person is going to hold the space while the other person talks, and then you reverse the roles, right? So you are allowed to fully express yourself. The other person is not going to interrupt you. They are going to repeat back what they actually heard, and you can correct them and all of that. And then they make a point of empathizing with that, of understanding your position. Because here's the thing, for you, it's real. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. For you, it's true. For the other person, it's true. I mean, it's this old thing where you see this drawing of a number 6, and one person is sitting on one end and saying it's a 6, and the other person sits at the other end and saying it's a 9, right? And both have their point, both have their truth to it, right? And so it is about respecting that we have all our own internal reality. And what we see is true for us. It's valid for us. It's not the absolute truth, but being acknowledged within that and saying, well, okay, understand. Of course, if that's how it looks to you, of course you're going to be hurt. I get it. Like, hearing that can do a lot for the person. So practicing to hold space for each other can really be transformative for the relationship.
Yeah. I think, I have a question with that. Because what is the line between, if you notice, I like my lines. What is the line between, acknowledging that the other person is hurt, right? But you didn't mean to. You said 6, they saw 9, you got into a fight about it, they feel hurt, and then you go, you're sort of like acknowledging that because you don't want to upset them. You don't want to be the one causing them pain because it pains you. But then where's the difference? So, because I feel there's also a line between that and then apologizing for things that you haven't done, right? Like, you can't, like, I'm thinking of personal experience. I remember one time someone said something, they reacted to a picture of mine that I sent, and I got really triggered. And I told a friend, and she was like, just don't say anything, just wait, because you seeing this as him mocking you, but that's not how I see it. And it's probably, you have to trust that that's probably not his intention either. If you say it straight away and you block it, he's not going to feel like he can have humor with you. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because sometimes in what she said, she says, you can't, if you're asking him to apologize, you're asking him to validate something he didn't even try to do in the first place. Like, I understand that. And I was glad that she told me that, because you can't, it's like, you can't apologize for something you haven't done, but you can apologize for something, how you've made someone feel. But I decided I did not to tell him, and I'm glad I didn't, because as it turned out, it was all good. You know what I mean? Like, there was no bad intention. I got to know him better. But it's, so where's the line between, yes, I acknowledge you, into apologizing for crap that you haven't done? Because that's also not okay, I feel. That's also a little bit rapey. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like, demanding something. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's different things, right? There's simply clearing up a misunderstanding, right? Being like, well, you heard I want pizza. I said I want beef. Whatever, like it was just a simple misunderstanding. You can just say, this is what I actually said. And you can clear those kind of things up. The other thing is in the phrasing. The phrasing is, if this looks like, if you see things this way, of course it's hurtful for you. I get that. I understand that you are acknowledging their reality. You're not saying that this is the truth, that this is the ultimate reality, or that they are 100% right. You're just simply saying, yeah, if you hear if you feel like I'm attacking you, of course you're going to get scared. I get that. You see, now you are validating them. You can still add to that. I wasn't trying to attack you. But you're not coming from a place, oh, hold on, you're wrong there. I did not do this and all that. Then they're already on their defense.
Right, exactly. Yes. Okay, that's what the line is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good, actually. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, because if you go on that defense, it's going to stop people from opening up to you as well next time. If you go, well, I didn't do that, it's like, whoa.
Exactly. And it's actually a very destructive pattern. The defensiveness is one of those. I think, was it John Gottman? He has the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse or something like that. And if they're present or whatever, he can predict divorce by a very high number. And one of them is being defensive. Because being defensive is actively, derailing the conversation because you are defending. So you're going out of connection, but connection is what's needed to clear up and heal things and all of those kind of things.
And so what's that person called, you said? And what's the
John Gottman.
Oh, okay, I don't know. And the 4 horses, that's like the 4 things that he could...
The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, I believe. He calls them. One of them is being defensive. I don't remember all the other ones. Because I lumped more together than what he did with the 4, but it basically, contempt is one of them, I think, as well.
Oh, that's the worst one, I think. Well, sorry, I don't even know what the others are, but that one, that's a hard one to come back from.
Right.
The minute someone has contempt for you, whew.
Yeah, they're not nice. And so you do want to be mindful of how are you engaging in communication with your partner. Are you blaming them? Are you attacking them? Are you being defensive? Are you using contempt? Those kind of things. You want to be mindful of that because they are, I would say they are toxic. And I would say also they are actually based in fear, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm being defensive, I'm actually in fear. When I need to blame someone, I'm in fear.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And so the way I see it as a very big principle in relationship is that a relationship thrives when there's love and it dies when there's fear. And so you want to keep aligning yourself towards love rather than fear.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say a big thank you. And just before we say goodbye and before you tell us like where we could find you, how can people work with you, I want to ask you the 2 finishing thoughts, and I'd have to see if maybe they've changed from last time. The first one is, what did you wish you'd realized at 18? But like on a cellular level, not that someone just told you, but like what did you wish you'd really understood at 18?
Right. There's many things I wish I would have known at 18. Let's give just 2. Keep it short. One of them is who I am at the essence of who every human being is, not just the persona of Jáchym, but who we are, who our being really is. If I could get that at 18, that'd be great. The other thing is what it means to be a man. If I could have gotten that at 18, that would have been great.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's a big thing for, especially nowadays where everything is so blurry now and it's so confusing, and with gender roles and people abolishing them and people think no, it's right. Like there's just so many, all these different things that are coming up, and I think it's very confusing now for men and for women to know where we stand and how we move and what's best for us, because there's all these messages out there. And but yeah, it's I think to go within, like you said, to be honest with yourself. Which part do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And the second question is, what stuff do you not put up with anymore?
Time wasting. I have no time, man. Like it's killing me to have a baby. I gotta be like on my game all the time. So I can't put up with time wasters or time wasting myself. I just go get stuff done.
Yes. I think that's a lot of people. Like when I see friends with babies, I can tell like their time is gone. They have no time. Like I watch them and I'm like, my neighbors have, they've got this toddler and she's about to have a second one, and it's like, I don't even know how you do it. I look at her and I have no idea. Like, it's intense. It's really intense. So Jáchym, can you please tell us, where can people find you? How can people work with you?
Right. You can head over to yourexceptionalrelationship.com and you can contact us through there. You can find a work with us page. And that's really where we are most active at the moment. We don't really have much of a social media presence yet. That's something that might come in the near future, though.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jáchym. I really, really, really enjoy having you on the show. It's been such a pleasure, such an honor. I just want to say a big, 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 big thank you.
Well, thank you for having me again.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, share it, subscribe it on iTunes, follow it on Spotify, or whichever platform you listen from. However you show love is how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-s.com, or come and find me on Instagram at @toolfordishitpodcast. See you next week, and until then,
using health inappropriately.